good time right now to really take the areas that you have examined yourself in and try not to slip where you have to write a slippage note. In other words, don't take those things so lightly. If I were you and I had to write more than 2 slippage notes about the same thing, I would feel like I was really slipping and failing. Let's use Lagodi, for instance. Driving 2 or 3 miles over the speed limit. That's one of his slippages. If I did that more than a couple of times, I would wonder what's wrong with me that I can't correct it. And I would get busy and exert the effort in that direction to not do it again. If you think you can get by with slippages in the next level, you're sadly mistaken. That's a weakness, is it not? It's a weakness in that particular area. And a member of the next level is not weak. If you make one mistake, one slippage, it could cause the whole nation to have a bunch of 2-headed people when they were only supposed to have one, if you can understand it. Because, and you can say, write a slippage note to the older member and say, oh, I'm sorry, but I had my mind on something else, or I got distracted because of so-and-so doing such and such, and I guess that's my weak mind, but I'm going to work on it, and hopefully it won't happen again. That wouldn't go very well, especially if you were one of those 2-headed people down there. I mean, it just doesn't. I'm exaggerating because I don't think you would be placed in that that responsible position right at first, but you've got to think in severe terms and take all this a little bit more serious. And if you can't correct that slippage by writing a slippage note, get your pen and paper out and write it down as many times as it takes. I will not go over the speed limit. I'm going to keep my eye on that speed limit so that it will not go over what I'm supposed to be driving, or whatever it is that you're disturbed with. But if you pick your nose or bite your fingernails more than once or twice, then I would sit down and say, I will not do that any longer. If it is bad enough that you write a slippage note to me, then it takes its words correcting if you feel like it is not.
And you shouldn't be willing to take so long correcting it. You shouldn't be pleased with it.
It's very hard for me to understand somebody being able to write a slippage note more than once. It's very hard for me to understand. I try very hard to be tolerant because I don't throw my stack or call them up or fuss at them or anything like that. But it hurts me inside because it's like saying, do you care or don't you care? Can you understand it? I care a whole lot about this plan. I care so much that I can't sleep at night because we don't know at times, because we don't know how we can help him. But and we want you all to care as much as we care. And if you do care, then you will not do those things that you feel like you want to correct. Can you see? Can you all understand it? And the only way you can do it is to print it in that mind that you're not going to do it again. And say, I am not going to do it again. I am not going to be attracted to some female vehicle or some male vehicle when I go out on my autocrat task. And stick to it. Mean it. Don't just say it and then as soon as an attractive female or male comes in, well, the eyes go and you look them over just like a human. Or a female fantasizes about marriage with somebody. You've got to stop it one day, and you might as well decide to do it right this minute. You all know what you want to correct, right? So give it and do it. Got 5 minutes. Anything else you want to say?
4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Okay. That's it. I told the craft when we talked to him on the telephone that we're going to try to, for a while, until your heads can think that way automatically. For a while we had Mercodi because he used to make such strong statements of authority that we had him on a little game of saying, starting off anything when someone asked him a question or he had something to say, he would start off by saying, that is, when he played the game right, he was to start off by saying, I may be wrong, but I think, or either I may be wrong, but it seems to me. And so now we've asked the whole craft to have everybody experience prefacing what they say by I may be wrong, but I think. And of course, it won't do any good if you say I may be wrong, but I think I know there's a so-and-so. In other words, you've got to follow that same feel right through with what you have to say, which means that you don't trust yourself, but you're expressing what might be the case. And but we still at times slip out of that. So we've asked that everybody preface what they say with that until we get used to the feel of it, and it's what we're projecting, whether we say it or don't say it. T and I had a meeting with Steelody this morning that we hope was very productive, and of course that will depend upon where we go from here. Like we told him when we got through with the meeting, he said how much he wanted to make certain adjustments and correction in his way of thinking and actions. And he said, of course, it doesn't do any good to tell us, but show us. And that's not sarcastic. That's just anytime you want to. It does no good to say, I really want to do so and so. What does good is to do it and then let it be witnessed, because then your intentions have been proven by your efforts. We explained to Steelody, and we're going to explain to you all, and we hope that those of you that go back tomorrow will have no meeting, and will help explain this to the craft, even though we're putting it on tape, because it will be helpful if you can take what we will say and express it yourselves with your own vehicles and efforts of your mind. What we had recognized after trying to help Steelody and Rody and Stanlody is that we're zeroing in on one little aspect of their schooling where they, because of their absence during that period of time, they need special help in one particular area. And that particular area is one that you all have had a lot of extra help in. But their boogers have really kind of tried to set us up in a circumstance where we found ourselves between a rock and a hard place, because on the one hand, when we tried to help them, or when their classmates tried to help them in this area, their booger would come right in feeling that they were being singled out, they were being picked on, or that it was really unfair. Let's go back and discuss the area we're talking about that needs special help. And that is the area of not judging or having an analysis or an evaluation of your own, but your mind being made up of, like I said the other day, that your next level mind is made up of an accumulation of what your teachers have taught you, and anything else is inappropriate to use. And if that mind is small because you haven't been with your teachers that much to have had it grow quite a bit, then it means you've got to be pretty silent and pretty much of a sponge, and perceiving everything that you can learn that has come through your teachers in establishing next level thinking. Now, all of you in the class went through the same hard experience, and that was of stopping thinking on your own and stopping evaluating what your teachers or your classmates would say, mainly what your teachers would say, and just accepting it. It's like passing through an hourglass with a teeny hole, and on one side of the hourglass is your old mind, and it can't get through that hole. And then, but as you force, as your growth pulls you through that hole, all that starts to build on the other side of the hourglass is next level thinking and what you've been taught. Now, Steele Lodi, Stan Lodi, and DeRody innocently are having difficulty recognizing their old mind or their booger in these aspects, because their booger and their vehicle and their old mind just don't seem that bad to them at times, and it cons them into thinking that it's constructive in ways that it isn't constructive. For example, as we began to talk with Steele Lodi today about this, he said, well, I agree with you, which kind of exposed a major expression of what was wrong, because it's not your place to agree or disagree with an older member. It's your place to accept that what your older member is giving you is true. And then Steele Lodi had, we're just going to use you as a guinea pig, and we wouldn't do this if we felt you hadn't responded well. Then he said, well, there were times when things that my teachers told me that I was dealing with, that I must admit I really tried to make the shoe fit, and I couldn't make it fit. And there again, he stuck his foot in his mouth innocently. In other words, he proved that again he was judging, he was evaluating what we had given him in certain lessons, trying to make them apply, but couldn't. And there again, that's not the place of a student in relationship to older members, to evaluate or try to make the shoe fit. If the teachers say they fit, then what the student has to learn is, if you say they fit, they fit. And my problem must be bending in a way that I can recognize how they fit. But if I can't make them fit, then I am competing with my teacher's mind. I'm resisting the help that I'm getting, and I am judging that my teachers meant well, but they were inaccurate, because I was accurate. I tried to make the shoe fit, but I couldn't. Now, can you see the flaws in that? Now, you all have been through that again and again and again, until you have, for the most part, knock on wood, have stopped doing that. And now we've got to test Steele Lodi and Stan Lodi and DeRody in this way to see if they mean what they say when they say, I really want to learn the lessons that I'm tardy in. I want to accept help from my teachers. I want to take my classmates at a higher level. And because they have said this, and we felt like they meant it when they said it. And yet the other side of that same coin was that when it was given to them, they couldn't accept it. without thinking. Well, at times they could accept it, but there were still times when they couldn't accept it without thinking that they were being singled out or it was unfair judgment, or still evaluating, still analyzing and competing. So we want it to be out in the open. We want the three of them to have an attitude of, I realize I need special work in this area of the class. And then for you other classmates, not in any sense to abuse your relationship with them as you do help them, but we know that they have been capable of seeing you in a light that we, your teachers, know you are no longer capable of coming from, where they still thought you were coming from. Now, here again, the boogers can say, well, if you'd seen them when I saw them, you'd know where they were coming from. We know all the arguments of the boogers. Unfortunately, we're pros with the boogers. We wish we weren't, but we've had to be. So the real test is, can the three of them acknowledge that they need extra help in this area, be mostly slow to offer things or to see things. In other words, like in meetings, we be very, I'm not sure, but maybe they shouldn't say anything for a while in meetings, because it will, even when they desire to help, it's like opening the door to help to come from sources other than what they've learned from the teachers, because they know that they're the side of the hourglass of their next level mind has a lot of growing to do before it can offer much help. So they have, for the main part, they have to be sponges, trying to learn lessons as fast as they can learn them, and not feeling that this position is a footdown or against them. In a sense, we told Steele-Odie, it's like a little boy who for some reason, his parents had to go to Europe for 3 or 4 months in the middle of the school year, and while they were there, he learned a lot of Europe and things while he was with his parents. But then he went back into the school year and he missed a great large chunk of class. So then, is he willing, and does he, it's not only willing, it takes a great amount of effort to make up for that period in time. Now, we feel like what the three of them have experienced while they were outside the classroom has given them the kind of stamina to take this accelerated growth period if they choose to take it. In other words, they had to grow strong in a certain way while they were away from the classroom. But they've also got to recognize that part of the reason they were sent away from the classroom to learn what they learned was because of this same thing that still needs to be conquered. This thinking as separate, thinking with their own minds, thinking, trusting that they have judgment that is that can be competitive with their teachers. Okay, we were talking about comparing Steele-Odie and DeRodie and Stam-Odie's time out of the class with a child who comes back into the classroom. He can't, theirs is a little different, granted, because the next level asks that they be sent out for special tasks, which gave them an accelerated opportunity to pass a very serious test or not to pass it. They passed one aspect of it, which was a very difficult aspect, because at that time that they were sent out of the class for a while to do different things, they did not turn against the class or just dive right back into the world and try to feel like they had failed or had been booted out. They at least did the best they could to stay in forward motion. One aspect was correct, and that was a very serious test passed. Another aspect which they did not pass so well is they let resentment creep in. Conscious or unconscious resentment crept in. And even though they tried to fight it off, their booger used the fact that they were out of the class for a while to harbor a great deal of resentment, so that when they came back in the class, even then as they fought it off, things were constant. The resentment was constantly showing its face by seeing others resenting them. You know how those boogers always work? They always have you see in others what really you are feeling yourself. And they saw their classmates at a level that they were not coming from. And they were putting themselves in a position that was impossible to help, because they were saying, I want help. Then when help was offered, it's you're singling me out. You're being unfair to me. You're giving me too much help. And you can't. What you've got to have, or what the three of them have to have, if they want to try to make up for this area that needs special help, they've got to say, I want to be paid in the next level's hands. I don't want any mind of my own. I don't want to evaluate what my teachers say or my classmates say and then decide whether or not I'll accept it or I won't. They won't get anywhere if they cling to that kind of mind that will test it and evaluate it. Unfortunately, that's the fact. They won't get anywhere if they cling to it. And you all know that. You had to shed that safety valve, or that ace in the hole. It was almost, their booger had them bring back into the class collectively almost a hidden feeling of, we'll go back and check out the class, and if all goes well, then we'll proceed, but if it doesn't, then we will know that we'd be better off to be out of the class. And you can't carry that with you and to be putty in the hands of the next level. You can't do it. And Steele Odie recognized very clearly this morning that he's still very capable of evaluating wrongly what his teachers tried to help him with. We said if you stepped on a spacecraft, and another older member said, I still see this with you. I thought you had worked on that. And he said, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. The older member would have to say, well, where can I put you while you learn to take me at a different level? Because I wouldn't have given you that if it was not right for you to receive. Now, we did help him understand that at times we will innocently give them information that would, in a sense, we would never do it intentionally, but in a sense would give them an opportunity to question what we're saying. And it's their chance at that moment to choose not to question what we're saying. Like, let's say we said that the porch fell off out here, and because we thought the porch had fallen off out there. And Steele Odie thinks, well, I just saw it 1 second ago. So, but the fact was, it was a second ago that he saw it. And even so, if we had said the porch just fell off out here, Steele Odie's test is, what is wrong with me that I think I saw it, when they wouldn't have told me that it fell off if it didn't fall off. And isn't it strange that I can still see it there when it isn't there, because they told me it has fallen. Now, this is the kind of necessary trust
faith members of the next level have to have toward their elders. And this is the area that the three of these students need extra help. Now, we feel like Steele-Lodi, and we hope DeRody and Stamodi will be capable of feeling that they have recognized, at least Steele-Lodi, we think, has recognized that he has stepped way off base in things he has said in meetings, and that he has not yet grown capable of seeing things in a proper light. So that means that he's going to have to destroy thoughts of analysis and evaluation as they come in, and simply grow as fast as he can like a sponge in receiving information. Now, we hope that he will, if he can see what we're saying and see it clearly and get a good picture, then we hope when you go back to the class that he will help Stamodi and DeRody and the rest of the class understand. His test will be, can I get my booger so clearly behind me that I can verbatim or without changing the meaning get this lesson across to, can I project that I want this correction? And can I project it to those two who were with me for a while that this is what we need in a way that they will want to accept it? And can I project to my other classmates that I don't want to take you all wrong any longer, that I mean it when I say I don't know what I thought I knew, and I will take your help from the level you're trying to give it to me. Now, this is tough. This is a big step, and but it can be done very simply with determination. It's not that tough. Your booger would have you think it's extremely tough, but it's not that tough. Can you help me fill in more? Yes, like for those that might not be at the initial meeting, or that would help you express your position with this information. Are we putting you on the spot?
Well, I really feel this, so I would like to say it.
Okay, say it.
Writing downstairs and felt like I wanted to say this to the class.
Okay.
It's become more clear to me that this is how my booger's working on it. The resentment that's there. He comes in and, tries to make me feel inferior. And I realize that I do need help in special areas, but the booger tries to blind me to the help, thinking that I'm being picked on or singled out. And what I really feel and what I want to say is that I do want help from everyone. Earlier, Links had given an instruction to the class that I'm not sure everybody in the class is aware of still. Maybe they are, I don't know. But the instruction, as I remember it being, was that anyone in the class had the authority to say to Steele-Lodi or Stamodi or DeRody, this is how we do this, a correction, a helpful correction. And I don't feel like I've either taken that in the right way, or that there's something about my booger or my attitude that has projected a wall that has kept people from helping me in that way. And I want to just say that wall is a booger, and I want that wall dissolved. I know that I'm not going to get the help if that wall is there.
That's right. Well, the reason they have been slow is because they felt there was a reticence on your part to accept it. They didn't know when you would accept it willingly and when you wouldn't. And you never know when you're going to accept it willingly and you aren't. It depends on who your company is. And that's the way it is with anyone. It depends upon whether your booger is present or not. And whether, if he is present, you can say to yourself, I wouldn't be resisting, or I wouldn't be misinterpreting, or this wouldn't give me a bad feeling if my booger was not present. I would accept this from the right place and know that no matter how it's coming out of their mouth or how it may sound to my ears, that what they're trying to do is help me in this circumstance. I wish you could trust your classmates, you and Stammer and Drury. I think you want to trust them, but your booger does not want you to trust them at all, and wants you to see them in a way that the two of us will tell you is not so. And we aren't easy on your classmates. We're hard on your classmates because it's our job to be hard on your classmates. But we also know that certain things that you still, or that your booger at times would still have you think they're coming from a lower level, they are not even capable of coming from that level any longer. And I can even still feel your booger wanting to say, well, if you could see them sometimes when I see them, that's not so. I'm sorry, it is so. Their vehicle may still respond or sound in a way that makes it appear so that way, and they still have to fight to not let that happen. But we know more where they are coming from, and that doesn't mean we're excusing them for the areas that they need to work on, because we don't want to excuse them. We don't want them to excuse themselves. But it's just like we know that some of your classmates who have still certain areas to work on, and the superficiality of those areas makes it appear that they're harsh or strong or this or that, which is a bunch of malarkey. It's just before they know it, their vehicle has expressed itself in a way that is totally false. And it still gives the opportunity for the person they're expressing it to see them in a totally wrong light, if they choose. Or they have the option of saying, I realize that what they're dealing with is trying to blind me from where they're really coming from. You always have that option. And what I'm trying to teach you here is a skill that is very well developed in the mixed level. And that is the skill from seeing people from where they're coming from. And this isn't to brag. This is it's in order not to take people at a wrong level. Now your boogers can still at times, unfortunately, twist that upside down and have you blinded to things that you are doing at the very moment that an older member recognizes you're doing them. And you can be so convinced that, isn't it too bad that my well-meaning teachers can still see me at that level? We've given you the example of, in that regard, like one of the classmates that's not long ago, that just reeked around the craft of sensuality right before leaving and running and getting married within a month. And when we said, you've got to get a hold on this, you're reeking of sensuality. And the classmate had the attitude of, how can my teachers see me in such a low light? They must have dirty minds to see me in such a low light. And yet, what are the facts? Within a month, there was a marriage. And all of their classmates knew that that individual carried with them an aroma of sensuality. But the booger was so present by that time that the poor little individual, in not running that booger off, couldn't even recognize that it was so. Can you see what we're saying? That's the characteristic of boogers. That's the natural process, always to blind you from the truth, which gets back to the main point. Your trust has to be unqualified with your teachers. Unqualified, unfortunately. And it will be that way with any elder. Or you will begin to accumulate the stuff that builds toward being a renegade.
Excuse me, I want to say something that nobody was holding the knife to his Timothy's back or his arms around his back to make it happen. And we didn't want him to say something just to be saying it, but I felt like he was sincere when he said it. this is more or less just Amodi and Doroti. But in order to understand what we're talking about, it's the meetings that you all have participated in and read over some of the remarks that you have said about your classmates, and look at it try to look at it with your mind and not your booger's eye, and see that you were actually taking your classmates on a more level.
And exercising thoughts that were not of your next level mind.
Let me give you an example here, if I can find it. This was from Stamodi in regards to Habodi's meeting. He said, when I first got here, Habodi was one of the first to help share procedures with me. This was done well, gently. Later, after I'd been here a while, Habodi seemed to be too sure, as though he had no question in his mind about what the procedure was. Gave examples of two cradles doing bread differently. Booger blinds you to ideas that you may be wrong. The other things you mentioned in notes, irritability, etc., you seem to work on and catch early, maybe you use procedures as a defense or too intensely. Now, can you all see what happened there? What is it?
I started out fine, but then
No, what Habodi and Habodi is what I'm talking about. Who changed, Habodi or Stamodi?
Habodi started out fine by saying Habodi wasn't intelligent. Then the Booger said then changed the picture of Habodi.
Right, but who changed? Did Habodi change or did Stamodi change? You're talking about his remark, right?
Correct.
No, I'm talking about how Stamodi was seeing Habodi.
No, not
No.
exactly. Not exactly.
In other words, do you know what I'm talking about, Jim? What is it?
See, I think Stamodi maybe allowed his Booger to see Habodi in a different way than when he first saw him. And instead of seeing that Habodi was being helpful, he saw Habodi as
Okay, but who changed?
See, he saw, what he said was that he saw Habodi changing, right? He saw Habodi first acting such and such, which was an okay way. And then he saw him changing, acting with the... Now,
But who changed?
But, yes.
Habodi hasn't changed. I haven't seen any change in Habodi. So it was the change, I mean to the better. I've seen You can prove I've got worse. So it was obvious. This statement let us know that Stamodi was changing. And Stilodi agreed to that remark, which proved to us that even Stilodi changed.
But,
In other words, the newness had worn off. They had been just about up to here with all kinds of help.
And seeing others as being resentful of their being in the class and so forth and so on.
And they may have felt like, felt a resentment. I'm not saying that they did, but they may have felt a resentment, which would make Habodi have to come on really strong in order to get across what they're trying to say. Which would give
Yes, if
Habodi
they built
the
up a
appearance.
wall, then, and Habodi thinks, well, you've been here long enough that hopefully you know where I'm coming from, and therefore if I'm going to help you, I'm going to have to push a little harder because of the wall I feel that is there, which could have been interpreted, well, you've sure changed, Habodi. You used to be helpful. Now you're really full of authority, and you're really laying it on me. Now, it's almost like the boogers accompanying me. And it would have accompanied any of the rest of you if you'd been through the same thing these three had been through. It's like the boogers kind of laid off for a while when they came back into class, until they'd been there just long enough that they would accept an attitude from the boogers of being comfortable with criticizing others. And it's like they waited to attack them when they felt like they would be familiar with the classmates, that they could use them to attack the classmates. Because that then, in a sense, would give them the option of saying, boy, if I can see you guys bad enough, I'll get the heck out of here. You see what we're saying? Even though the thought was not maybe that clear in their heads, but the boogers were saying, of course the boogers don't want them to accomplish this task, and so the boogers would have them accept things for a while and then slowly let this disease creep in of seeing things wrong, in order to give them an excuse for beginning to separate and beginning to criticize and beginning to judge that the classroom and my classmates are not quite as good as I thought they were, or as I hoped they would be, because they're certainly being unfair to me, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just like everything that the booger could think of to say that would have them pull away. Now, they resisted an awful lot. I wouldn't still be sitting here, because they've certainly had some pretty thorough attacks from these boogers to try to get them to not complete what is required of them in the classroom. And we know the boogers aren't through. We'd be naive if we sat here thinking they would be. And they will try even harder at the perfect moments when they think they can really get a foot in the door. So be prepared. You know, this exposure is going to give you a fresh start if you accept it in the right way. And it will give Derodi and Stamodi a fresh start if they accept this help in the right way.
If you, every one of you who have gone through this worked easier to take through it. In other words,
it was just as hard to get you through it as it is to get them through it.
So don't feel like you all are really bad. It's just every one of them have gone through it.
It's a hard.
And the ones who couldn't go through it left.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
this is why it's a really tedious time. It's just like when Dodie left. She wrote us a letter telling us how much she cared about us, but that the reason she left was because her classmates were so bad.
Yeah, there was so much deceit and all in the classroom and things, which gave her, her booger had her, could make her feel good if it had her feeling righteous. And the only way it could have her feeling right was to see all the faults out there, and I don't want to be a part of all that. So the best thing for me to do is to go where I can be right.
To be vibrant and right. But anyway, you're all getting to be vibrant and right, but in the right way. But we're not here to talk about the ones who dropped away. The most important thing is for, now we feel like still Lodi wants still, and we hope that Stan Lodi and Dorothy will also ask their classmates, and we hope that all three of you will stand in front of your class and say to them, help me in any way that you can.
Yes, let it be known that you mean business.
And be willing to do it. And classmates, you've got to be on your toes, and you cannot take advantage of them.
Or abuse them.
That's right, or abuse it. In other words, you can't be quoting procedures if you're quoting the wrong procedure, because hopefully they will have studied the procedures. And this is what causes conflict.
And now we're putting them in a position where they can't question you, because they won't learn their lesson if they question you. So that puts more pressure on you to be right in your procedures. Do you see what we're saying?
Well, don't quote procedures unless you know for sure what procedure it is. Especially don't correct them if you think it's a certain way. We don't want new procedures created. Okay? Just so you can be right.
What the point he was making was don't let your boogers single you out as to feeling like, well, boy, since I've got this to do, I might as well give up, because this is such a big hurdle, because that's baloney. And like she said, there's not one of them that wasn't just as difficult to get through this hurdle. But it is probably one of the biggest hurdles in the gamut of hurdles. And, without a doubt, it's one of the biggest ones. And it's been the biggest thing that caused ones who couldn't make the hurdle to leave the pasture.
We believe that if you can just accept them from where they're coming from, the clients, when they try to help you, no bad thoughts are thought because you don't know, if you can understand it. In other words, no one thinks less of you because you don't know how to handle them. It's how you accept the help that's important. If you can accept it in the right way, then that shows how much you have grown.
Yes, and keep your eyes on yourself and what you need to learn, and don't let your booger distract you from that and waste your time by being aware of their mistakes. They're going to make plenty of mistakes, and you can always find them if you're looking for
Especially
them.
now. You have to consciously talk yourself through it. In other words, if somebody appears to be, let's use the incident with Parcody and the car situation, thinking that he was afraid that you could do the task better than he could, and so on. When thoughts like that are attacking, you have to consciously talk yourself up to a higher level of feeling that it's within yourself that these thoughts are coming from, not from him. Do you
And it
understand?
takes a willingness to abort those thoughts and say, "I'm sorry, those thoughts aren't so." Say to yourself, "I'm sorry, they aren't so," and refuse to accept them, and then get up to a position that would be more receptive.
The only way you could be right in what you feel is if somebody actually told you. If you can
In words you couldn't interpret any other way.
In other words, if I said to you, I don't want you to have my task because you might do it better than I can do it, and then we would take it away from you. Then you would know that's what I was saying. But if you thought you could tune into my mind and through my actions come up with that kind of interpretation, you would be wrong.
And even now, if I can go an step further, maybe, if T will permit, and maybe this is an extreme, but where you could do the most good for yourself at this point would be even if someone said that to you, to question whether or not you're capable of interpreting it properly. Do you see what I'm saying? In other words, fighting off, accepting that it meant that. Can you see what I'm saying, Eloy?
Well, are you saying that if somebody said, like what you said,
Yeah.
do this such a way, is to look at it in such a way that...
In other words,
that's
you
what
would,
they mean.
yes,
That's right.
you would be growing the fastest if you refused to even accept that at face value, even if they meant it that way. But what are you concerned with? Finding fault with them? Or are you concerned with you're growing faster in the right direction? Okay. That's right. In this sense, members of the next level are selfish. What they want to do is grow as fast as they can in the right direction. Why are they selfish? Because that's what makes service to them open up, is as they grow faster in the right direction. And that brings them closer to older members. That opens doors to them, not because their ego needs it or because they want it in that way, but because it offers them opportunities of service.
When we received all the notes from individuals and we read the help wanted notes, if we believed or we felt everything that was written in those notes were as bad as they sounded, I think we would probably go jump off the cliff and say. But we know
Praise
that
the Lord,
they're
to
not
come
as
rescue
bad.
us.
We'd fall on the ground, thank you. But what we're getting at is it's characteristic of you at this time to think that every little thing that is not a next level thing is magnified and so bad that you want to get rid of it. From picking your nose to biting your toenails or your fingernails.
That'd be a good shoot.
It is good. Like, for instance, Jim Mody's note. I can't believe he's as bad as he seems. Parco.
And one thing wrong that Jim Mody's got to work on is stop seeing himself
Right. And that's
in
right.
such a bad light.
And but we want you to pick yourself to pieces. to a, not so much that you put yourself down all the
That's
time,
right.
but examine yourself and see how you can improve. But the most important thing is, how can you accept your classmates? And how can you communicate with them? How can you live in harmony with them without making waves? How can you work together as a crew where you can fit in without conflict, without headaches, without becoming nervous or upset or having to throw something down and walk out of the lab because you just can't take another minute of it. This is what we want you